Hey, hi everyone. This is Sai from LetsUpgrade. Let's talk about how to get your certificate. It's very simple. You will see two links in the description. Number one is the place where you have to go and mark your attendance. Marking your attendance tells us, like, okay, you are a legit student who have attended this particular session. Link number two is your assignment. This is where your 90% of the priority is. You have to go and submit the assignment that is given to you in this particular session. Once you're done submitting that assignment, we will be evaluating that. We will send you an email. If you get the passing criteria, then only we will give you the certificate on a particular date that is mentioned again in the description. Please check these three things, and this is the way how you will get a certificate from Let's Upgrade. Number one, mark your attendance. Number two, just go ahead and upload your assignment. Check for the email that you have received it, yes or no. What is the feedback that you have received from your trainer? Number three, check on which date the certificates will be released. Thank you. Bye. All the best. Happy learning.
All right, students. Hello, everyone. So I hope everyone is totally aware that why we are here in this session. We are trying to cover all the basics concepts of Java language, and along with time, we are simply going to keep on moving forward with the advanced topics as well as the time passes. Because this is our first session, so this session will be covering all the basic parts of Java. That is introduction to Java majorly, along with how things works inside a class, how Java works, why it is important, why is it famous, and all the stuffs like that. Let me just get started by introducing myself. My name is Kunal Suri. I will be your instructor for next couple of sessions where I will be covering most of the parts related to Java. So my screen is, I hope, is visible to everyone. I am simply going to list down all the topics which we are going to cover in next 1 hour. Let's suppose 1 hour in our. Okay, all right. First of all, let me just write down the two main topics of this session which we are going to cover. Here it is: getting started with Java. Our topics that we are going to be covering within this session as well. Within this session is are first of all, it is going to be simple introduction to Java. Next point will be simply environment setup. This part majorly is going to cover that how exactly Java language works. Like if we write down a code, then how exactly it is getting executed, how it is working inside your machine. That's the kind of stuff which we're going to cover inside this. Next up, we are going to go to some core syntax. Next up are going to be simple core syntax of how inside a Java language you define stuff. That is, if you're trying to write down some code, then there is a particular way of writing down things. You cannot simply write down anything and the computer will understand what you are trying to say. No, there are some particular syntaxes. If you're trying to say something, if you want to, let's suppose, declare some variable. If you don't know that, don't worry about it. If let's suppose, let me just put it in simple words. Let's suppose if you wanted to simply say something, so there is a way of how you are going to write it down in your compiler as in where you're going to uh, write down your code, and that way only will be machine will be able to understand that. So that part is simply called as syntax. We will check multiple things inside this particular topic, and it will be much clearer once the session will be ended. So stay with me here. Next one is are going to be variables, which I have just mentioned. Variables and data type. Variables and data types are one of the most basic things which you learn in any language, not specifically in Java. In any language, once you get started, those are going to be the most basic things, that the very first thing which you're going to get started with. And also within this session only, we are also going to take we are also going to cover taking inputs. That is, if you are working with a program, let's suppose if you're working if you're coding out something, it the values inside it are never going to be random, are never going to be hard coded. You have to take input from a user and then perform operations in it, right? So that part is going to be covered over here. That is, how do you take different type of inputs. You cannot directly take input with any type. No, that is not valid in Java language. So that we will define. It's pretty straightforward only, that we will cover inside this part. Okay, so without wasting any more time, let's just get started with the very first part. None of the part are going to take too long of your time, so do not worry about that. First of all, let me just clear a couple of things out here. That is, why Java actually? In fact, why any language at all? Well, see, if you are trying to solve some problem as an engineer should do, a software engineer is going to simply face a problem, and it is we are going to trying to solve it. To solve it, we have to implement something and create some stuff which will be applying our logic while solving that problem. So when we are trying to implement, we need a medium. That medium is going to be any programming language. As of this course, we are going to use Java language. Java is going to be the medium through which we are going to communicate our logic, our ideas, whatever we are thinking to the machine. Machine will simply compile it, run it, and at the end, our end result will be our solution. That's how we perform stuff. That is where Java language comes in. Now, the question that might come to your mind, that why only Java? Like, why are we so focused on Java language itself? Well, there are many advantages that Java language have over other languages. I personally like Java very much. I have been coding in Java for many years now, and it is the best language that I have found up till now. It is the most beautiful language according to me. Okay, so why is that? Because there are multiple things. There are many real world examples which we can cover through it. Because Java is a universal language, kind of, you can say. Java is universal because Java can be run independent of any machine. Well, there is a process to it. We will get to it in a couple of minutes. But some major advantages that we have in Java, let me just write those down, list those down. It is as simple as possible. Most of the syntax, most of the things which we are going to write down are going to be self explanatory. Okay. Along with simple, it is also portable. As I have just mentioned, it is Java language is totally platform independent. How it got platform independent, we'll get to that part later. But it is portable as of now. You can just write it down. Well, I'm expecting from you all to write down all the notes which I am mentioning right now. Everything that I am writing, you should be writing it a little more than that. Whatever I'm saying, also you should write it down. And what I am writing, you are obviously going to get those notes. I will try to share those notes with you, which I am writing down right now in front of you. Okay. Another thing is Java language is object oriented. Some of you might have heard about OOPS concepts. OOPS is simply object oriented programming. Well, this is something which we use so that we can actually implement real world problems. We can replicate real world problems into our machine and then solve it. That's what this stuff is used for. Later on, we'll get to that part as well. I have just mentioned that is Java is totally platform independent. Well, how exactly it got platform independent? Let me just explain that stuff first of all. So Java became platform independent because every Java file, every Java code actually that you create is not directly ran as it is. That is, whenever you write down a Java code, let me just do one thing. Let me just open up any online compiler. Let me just use any online compiler and write down some code there. Then I will mention you the flow which it is using. So I actually found this particular platform very user friendly. I mostly use it like this. So let me just open it up. Just give me a second. I'm just going to change the language, default language of this one to Java. So yeah, some things are already there. Couple of code is already written here, which is simply a hello world program. So as you can see, inside a Java code, this is a Java code which is by default present inside the compiler itself. There are a couple of things like we have a class here. If you can see, if you don't know what a class is, it's all right. You don't need to worry about it. But you can just keep in mind that yes, there is a class inside which there are some functions. Function is also another entity which we are going to learn later. But in every Java code, we are having a class inside which we are going to have a function inside which we are going to write down our actual code. This function which we are using, this function which is mentioned right here, is simply a main function. As you can see, a keyword main is written here. That means this particular function will be running at the very first time whenever you compile a program. Whenever you compile it, this particular function will always be running at the very first. Let me just do one thing and take this code. So let's suppose if we have this code, if we are having this code, so let's suppose if we have written this code, then what will happen? Actually, any Java code that you write down will always be present inside a file with an extension. Obviously, if you are writing a Java type of code, then the file will always be .java. Whenever you run this, until you have written the code, until then it is fine. But once you have run it, let's suppose you compile it once, then it will instantly generate a class file. This class file is actually makes our Java language platform independent, because later on it will be running through JVM. JVM is simply, if you ever heard about it, Java Virtual Machine. And every OS, every operating system, Ubuntu, Windows, Mac, everyone is having their own Java virtual machine, which will be helping us run that program. So totally platform independent. That would be the simple basic. In very short, I have given you this example. So as we have already have this code of hello world program, we can simply give it a run, and you will get to know that it is working totally fine. I have simply run it through this run button, and as you can see, it is printing exactly what I have mentioned right here. This part is actually called a string, that is string, string. This will always be printed exactly as it is, how we are writing it inside the code. There will be no changes at all. I could mention literally anything here. I could inside these double quotes, we can mention anything at all. Even if you say some numbers here, 1 2 3 4 5, I have added, then with a space, A B C D E, some random stuff I have added here. Let's suppose I can add simply plus, equal to, minus sign, or any other thing as well. If I run it right now, it will be printing exactly what I have mentioned inside the inverted commas, because strings will never change. String is not a variable. Variable is something which change with time. String is not a number. String is a constant which will always remain as it is, and whenever you run it, it will always be printed exactly same. Okay. Now, some basic stuffs I would just wanted to cover, that we are printing it, we are printing some stuff, we have already written our first program, very nice. But what exactly all these things which we have written here? What exactly all these things works? What is the meaning of all these things? Let me just break this down to you one by one. What I will do is I will simply edit this code a little bit. Let's suppose if I simply keep it hello world only, because it is the first program, I'm keeping it hello world only. I will simply have some spaces in between. Oh, just a second. Yeah, I think that would be fine. Some core syntaxes, let me just mention to you here. So here, first of all, let me just write a note here, that what exactly is a keyword. If any one of you already know what a keyword is, that is very nice. And those who don't know, just make sure you Google it once. Because according to me, I would say the most important skill that you should be having as a software engineer is not logic building or DSA or anything. It's actually Googling. If you know how to Google stuff, how to find the right thing which you need to find, that would be a very good skill to have. I would say those who do not know, just search it once, that what exactly a keyword means. I hope you must have tried it. Let me just mention that keyword is it's a reserved word for a specific meaning. Reserved word as in you cannot use these keywords as a variable. That means those keywords which are having their fixed meaning, and you cannot reuse them in any case scenario, in any possible scenario. We have a couple of keywords. That's why I've mentioned it, like this public. This public is a keyword. This is actually uh, this is actually what defines the access of a class. That means how far our class can be accessed. That's what this is mentioning. There are a couple of things. There are, apart from public, there are different other stuffs as well, which we will cover inside the oops class. But right now I'm just letting you know that this is a public keyword which defines the scope of a class. Along with public, we have this class keyword. This class is also a keyword which is defining that this particular area, from this bracket, from this open curly braces to this closing curly braces, in this entire area is called as a class, which is having a name of what? This is the name of that class, class main. So here we have simply defined that this particular class will be called as main, inside which we have a function. Okay, so function is also are having some keywords. First one is again public, which is again defining what is the scope of this particular function will be. Again, different access identifiers we are going to have later on, but right now I'm just letting you know that public is one keyword which is defining the access, which is defining the area scope. Then this static is there. I would say we are going to cover it later, but afterwards we are having this main uh, name of the function, which is main. This is also a keyword actually, because there is no other function which you can define which is having this name main. There can be only one main function in a program, because that function only will be running once you execute a program. Now, what this void is? Well, there is something called as, let me just write it down, type. In simple words, I can say that a function is something inside which you do some stuff, you perform some task. Now, obvious question would be, if you're performing some task, obviously you're going to need some answer out of it. If you're needing some answer out of it, that means that function should be returning something. If a function is performing some task, then you are obviously going to expect some answer out of it. That if you, for an example, if you are inputting some numbers inside a calculator, and inside the calculator it is performing some mathematical operations, you're obviously going to expect a number written at the end of it, because you are expecting an answer. Exactly, similarly here, this keyword, this void keyword, is also going to make sure that there is some return type, that this function definitely returns some answer once all the calculations are done. There are also some different return types which we have based on what type of answer we are expecting in return. Either we can expect a number type of answer, we can expect a name type of a string type of answer, we can even expect a true or false type of an answer. So based on that, we can mention our return type here. Even some specific scenarios we might need nothing at all from a function. In those cases, we can mention void as a return type. Okay, sure, great. Now here this part is called as a statement. Now statement can be anything. Anything at all can be a statement. Here this particular statement is simply responsible for printing stuff. Whenever you wanted to print something inside a Java program, then this is what you are going to mention. There are a couple of things which I would like to clear clear out here. Let me just clear the console first of all. And if you can see, there is at the end, we can see print ln. This is actually short for next line. Ln is simply short for next line. It is opposite only. Ln, next line. That means whenever you print something, in this case, hello world, then our cursor will simply go to the next line, and our next print statement will be getting printed from the next line. Let's suppose if I copy paste this same thing below as well, I can simply write it down here, system.out. If I simply say hi here, if I run it, you guys can see that I am getting hello world in the first line, and then I'm getting hi in the second line. In case if I remove this ln from here, it will not move to the next line. And now if I run it, you can see hello world is getting printed, and then without going to next line, it is printing hi as well. So I hope that clears out that how print statement works. Now, apart from print statement, there are many other statements inside a program which are not exactly to get the output, which are responsible for making the programmer understand what we are doing inside that stuff. Let me clear that out. That might have gone above the head, but that's all right. Let me just clear that out. What I meant to say is sometimes we, a programmer, mention things like, that is, below is a print statement. That's what I wanted to mention to myself. Let's suppose if I look at this code after 6 months in the future, then I want a clear statement here that this below line is trying to print something. But I cannot simply mention it like this. If I try to run it right now, it is simply going to give us an error. Different kind of errors it might give, because here compiler is trying to execute this statement, which is not possible because it's a wrong syntax. So here what we do is we actually make these things some comments. How do we do that? At the very beginning, if we can simply write down double front slashes, okay, forward slashes, so that actually makes it a comment. That means, what is a comment? Let me just write this thing down as well. A comment is a statement which never gets executed. Okay, some things which are never going to get executed are simply called as comments, like this one. If I try to run right now, it is going to print exactly what we are expecting, but this statement is not getting executed. It is simply there for us, for programmers, to get better understanding what the program is doing. Well, there are actually two types of comments which we have. One is a single line comment and other one is multi-line comment. Obviously, both of them are having their own syntaxes. Single line comment is having this syntax. That means when you mention two forward slashes in front of any statement, it will simply become a comment. Multi-line comment is looks like this: one front slash within a star symbol, or we can say asterisk. Here we can have multiple things, any number of lines as much as we want, and then at the end another asterisk with a forward slash. This can cover any number of lines at all, and everything inside it are simply going to be a comment, which will never going to get executed. As an example, I can show you here. This is an example of one line comment, and if I simply do this, mention this thing, now from here to here is a multi-line comment. I can mention literally anything here, any number of lines, whatever you're going to write down inside it. Whenever you run it, it will never going to get executed. Right now only hi is getting printed because we have commented this particular statement. Any piece of code, as I have mentioned, any piece of code, if it is inside a comment, it will never get executed. That is why only it is getting grayed out here. So that's how comments works. So now let's just move on with another important stuff that we have here, which is simply variables. Well, in English, variables are simply those things whose value is keep on getting changed with time. And obviously constants are those whose value is never going to get changed. As simple as that. Similar to here as well, we have some variables which you can define simply as a bucket or container, anything you can say, bucket or container, which stores some value. If variable is a bucket, imagining it as a bucket, let's suppose we are storing, let's suppose this is a number type of bucket. Let's suppose I am storing 5 inside it. You can store one thing at a time here. Let's suppose I am storing number 5 inside it. Whenever I'm going to call this bucket, or you can say this variable, then it is going to provide me with a value which is 5. But in future, it is totally allowed to me that I can simply erase this 5, and instead of 5 I can simply place any other number, let's suppose 7. Now in future, if I try to call this bucket, if I try to access this bucket, this variable or bucket will simply provide me a value which is 7. So previously it is being used as a value 5, now it is being used as a value 7. That is why we are calling it variables, because their values are keep on getting changed. But there must be some way to how do we define this variable. So here comes a declaration part. There are two keywords here, declaration and initialization. I will differentiate between both of those. just now. So let's suppose if I want to define a number inside a variable. So what I will do is I will simply use a data type, and then variable name. And with the equal to, this equal to is called as assignment operator. With an equal to, I will simply put on any value and I will end it with a semicolon. This is going to be the syntax of how you define a variable. Now, what exactly is this data type? You know what variable is, you know what value is, but what exactly is this data type? There are many data types actually. Let me just list down all of those and then we will define a couple of variables. Well, in Java, how many things are there? How many type of things are there? One thing I can say is number type of data. Number type, numbers are there which we deal with. So with for those we use int data type. Int is simply short for integer, which is going to store the integer type of variables, integer type of values. Another one is char, which is going to store character type of values. Another one you might already be aware about is simply boolean, which is responsible for storing either true or false value. Fourth one that I can remind now is float. Float as well as double are responsible for storing decimal type of numbers. Don't worry, I will give example of each one of them. There are a couple of more which also stores numbers itself. What is the difference between int and long, and why float and double are same only? Let me just clear that out. Along with that, we have short and byte as well. All of these, int, long, short, and byte, all of these are responsible for storing the numbers. Numbers as in, what do I mean by that? Numbers as in 5, or we can say even 1000, or even you can say -5. Any kind of number, or you can say 0. Any number that you can imagine are can be placed inside it, but within a range. That is what the difference between all of those int, long, short, and byte of the ranges. I do not remember the range right now, but you can Google it out. That is, byte and short is having very less range, that they are very less likely to be used. One of the most widely used, and along with that, long is also used many times. But long is having a much larger range as compared to int. Long is also responsible for storing, let's suppose, 5, 67. All these numbers can be stored inside long. But along with that, let's suppose long can also store 9, 7, 1, 8, 3, this kind of number. But this number cannot be stored inside int because range is now out of the limit. That is what the difference between all these data types. Now, same as that, we have float and double, which are responsible for storing decimal type of data types. That means I can say 5.2, -4.7, 3.75. These kind of decimal values can be stored inside float. Then what is the difference between float and double? It's actually a difference of precision. Like double can store 5.2377105, but that cannot be stored inside float. That is what the difference between double and float. Meaning of boolean. Here actually we have two keywords. One is true, other is false, which is simply going to give us an expression that if some relation is actually correct or not. So it's simply true and false, that's all. Only two values can be stored inside boolean type of data type, and that's all. Then we have char as well. Char is simply a short form for character. That means any character can be stored inside this data type. Character are always going to be inside small uh, single inverted commas. You can say small a, you can say capital A, you can even say small z, you can say capital Z, or any letter at all. Even any key that you can see in your keyword in your keyboard is a character. Even I can say a plus sign inside a single inverted commas is a character. Even a space is a character. Space is also included as a character only. Or any other number as well. Inside an inverted comma, I can say 5. Now this is a character as well. But inside single inverted commas, 5 to a, this is having length of 3. That is not allowed. A character is always going to be a single length. So these are all the good to go examples. Now, how do we declare something? If I wanted to, let's suppose, declare an integer type of bucket, or you can say variable. So our example would look like this: that int, let's suppose any variable, I can say a. I'm just going to name this variable as a, and with an assignment operator, I can simply assign a value 5 and end it with a semicolon. This is what our example of how we define a variable looks like. Now, here are two things as I have mentioned earlier. This part, int a, is called as declaration. That means you have defined a variable a with a data type of int, with a data type of int. And this part is called as initialization. That means you are initializing this value a, this variable a, with a value 5. That's how these two parts are divided. You can simply mention both of the parts in the same line itself. That is also totally valid. Now, one more thing which I would like to mention here, that is, whenever you are defining a variable, you cannot name a variable anything at all. As I have just mentioned previously, that any keyword you cannot use as a variable. Apart from that, there are some other rules as well, which will simply tell you that how do you define a variable. Okay, so let me just write down those rules as well in short. Rules of defining variables. First rule, first simple information would be that is a variable can contain any letter from small a to small z, from even capital A to capital Z. It can even contain numbers 0 to 9, all the numbers. Also, underscore, dollar sign is also a valid character that you can use inside a variable. But you cannot use it anywhere at all. That means start of a variable. You cannot start a variable from a number. That is, if you try to define, let's suppose this. If you try to say int 1 abc equal to 5, this is an invalid syntax. You can use the number later, anywhere later, but you cannot start with it. You can say int abc1 is equal to 5. That is a totally valid syntax. Any number cannot be at the very beginning of the variable name. Also, there is another rule, that is, you cannot have any space in between the variable name. Means, if you try to say int abc space efg is equal to 7, that is invalid. You cannot have space anywhere in the variable name. You have to create the variable without a space. That is totally valid. Or if you still need some space, that means then you can, what you can do is abc and you can use underscore, and then you can say efg equal to 7. That is also totally valid. One more rule here is variables are case sensitive. That means if I try to define a variable abc is equal to 5, and I have defined another variable capital A B C is equal to 5, then these are simply two different variables. These are not same. These are two different variables which we are going to treat as a totally different things. And one last rule which you already know, no keyword can be used as a variable name. That means if I try to say int class is equal to 5, that is a totally invalid syntax. You can have any variable but not any keyword. Now with that, we can simply say we are done with variables and data types. Apart from variables and data types, there are some other things as well. Another important basic things which we call it as operators. There are many type of operators, but some of for some of them we are going to talk about a couple of them. Uh, First one that we are going to talk about is arithmetic operator. Well, example of some arithmetic operators looks like this: plus sign, multiply sign, which is denoted with forward slash, and also a reminder sign. This is called as reminder. What arithmetic operator do is it helps us perform some mathematical calculations. Like if we are having a couple of variables, for example, if I simply put an example here, we have a variable a, int a is equal to 5. Let's suppose we have another variable int b is equal to. Now if I try to print system.out.println, and I can directly mention a plus b here. This is an operator, and these two in an equation, these two are called as operands, and this one is an operator. This relation is simply going to provide us a solution of what this mathematical calculation will give. So at the end, obviously, you know that it's our answer is going to be simply, I can simply mention you here as well, show you here as well that how it works. I can simply say int a is equal to 5 and int b is equal to 7, or any other values you can mention. If I simply say a plus b, this code, our answer here will be simply, if you say minus, run it, it is going to give us minus 2, because 5 minus 7 is minus 2. I can even say multiply or divide as well. If I multiply it right now, 7 5 35. By multiplication, it will going to give us 35. As simple as that. That is our example of an arithmetic operator. Apart from that, one another important one we also have is a relational operator. Well, example of some relational operators looks like this: greater than sign, less than sign, greater than equal to sign, less than equal to sign, double equal to sign, and not equal to sign. These are some examples of relational operators. As it is very clear from the name itself, it is going to define the relation between two values. That means, for example, if we say, let's suppose we have defined same two things as we have defined above. Let me just take those two things, int a or int b. Now if I try to simply print a greater than b, so as you already know that this relation is totally wrong because 5 is not greater than b, so this is going to return as false. If I change the sign here, in case if I change the sign here, a less than b, then that one is going to be true because that relation is correct only. If you're trying to compare two values, if the both are equals or not, then in that case you have to use two double equal to's assignment operator. This one is comparison operator, relational operator you can also say. That's how you can compare two values if it is true or not, which we have in our today's session as well are simply scanner class. Well, there is a class given to us by the Java developers itself, scanner class, which is responsible. Let me just write this down. Responsible for taking input from user, right? How do we take input from a user? Obviously, if we are trying to perform some operations, then we are going to need some input from a user. For example, let's suppose you are trying to log in into a website, then obviously you want the user to input their email id, their password, maybe their date of birth, and things like that, some other keywords, maybe some captcha, things like that. User have to input, you have to take that and then perform some operations behind the scene in the logic, and then at the end you can either say yes, your credentials are correct, you can enter into the website, or maybe your credentials are wrong, your captcha is wrong, or something else is wrong, then you cannot enter into the website. At the end we have decided our result based on the input which user has given. Okay, so how do we take inputs now? It is also very common that there are different type of inputs that we might get. It is possible that we might get a number type of input, right? If a user can enter their mobile number, that is a simple number, we have to input a number type of input, we have to take a in number type of input. It might also give us a name, user's name, so that could be anything at all, but it is going to be a string type of input. For to take each different type of input, we have to have another uh, predefined function. So scanner class contains a list of predefined functions which we use to take input from a user. Let me just list down those uh, predefined functions. So we do have a couple of inbuilt functions which I'm going to mention it right now. That is, some major ones looks like this. That is, to take input as integer. Instead of integer, there might be, as I was saying, instead of integer, there might be double type of value, there might be string type of value, or there might be character type of value. Let me just tell you all the inbuilt functions which we are going to use in each of the case. So here, let's suppose we have defined a scanner class. So defining a scanner class, we have defined a variable as well. I'm going to assume it is going to name as SCN. We will give an example as well. Do not worry about that. Let's suppose a variable name that we have is simply SCN, short for scanner. Dot inbuilt function will be next int. This is going to be an inbuilt function which you use to take a number as input. Okay, we will give an example as well for it. Another one is double, scn dot next double. Let's suppose if we want to take input of a string. Here it's a little tricky. There are two type of methods that we have. Either we can say only next. That's it. This is one way which we can take a string as an input, or we have also have next line. So both of these functions are responsible for taking string as an input, but both are having their own ways of working. Okay, how do we do with character? Scn dot next dot char at 0. This is 0 inside the parenthesis. This is how we input a character type of input. Let's just have an example of it as well. Huh? So what I will do is I will simply take a question here. Let me just clear this file here to make it look neat and clean. Here I'm going to mention a question. I have written down a question here. Let me just make it a comment first of all so that it will not give us any error. So now, here I have created a question, written down a question, that is create a student info program. That means a program, a simple program. We don't need to write down student. Create a program that asks for the user's name and age, then print a welcome message. So as we can see, we have to input two type of values here, and then we have to provide something as an output as well. What I will do is I have simply created a main class, or any class you can simply mention. Along with that, I have also created a main method as well. What I will do is I will simply create a scanner class inside it. How do we create a scanner class now? That is, you have to mention scanner and any variable name. I have simply mentioned SCN. I mostly prefer to use the variable name exactly same only all the time, so that it will not create any confusion for me anytime in the future. That's how I practice. I suggest you that you also use the same variable names, but that is totally up to you, totally your decision. We have created a scanner class with capital S and SCN with the variable name equal to new scanner, right? Here we have defined a scanner class. Inside this parenthesis, it is mandatory to mention system.in. Now our scanner class is completely ready to be used. Now what we will do is we will simply follow the question. So as I said, we have already defined a scanner class now and it is ready to be used. Now we can simply use it to take input according to the question. The question says take a user name as the input. Let's suppose what I will do is I will simply input a string type of value because name is going to be string type only. String type of variable name. Let's suppose I'm going to name this variable as name name. Now I'm going to do is scn dot, as we already remember from the notes, that is I have mentioned if you want to take string as an input, then next line is one of the best options. Along with that, next after that, we have to input the age as well, which we can easily assume that it is going to be a number only. So int type of age I have declared here. And how do we input a number? I think we can simply remember it from the notes itself, that it is saying integer can be inputted like this using next int. Here I will simply say scn dot next int. Now I can safely assume that name is having a string type of value and age is having a number type of value. What I will do is I will simply print a statement here inside the double quotes. Hello, your name is, then with a plus sign, I can simply mention the same variable which I have defined here. Later on, I can say, and your age is with some plus sign. I can simply mention age here. Now, what I will do is I will simply input these values and try to run this program. Here, what I will do is I will simply mention my name Kunal Suri, and in the next line I will simply mention my age, let's suppose as 26. If I run it right now, our output would simply look like this: hello, your name is Kunal Suri and your age is 26, same as what I have mentioned. This is our simple activity which we have done to clear the things out. This was it actually for this particular session. I will also create a next one.